He needed to reach out to Jake, to peel back the layers of pressure and expectation, to understand the boy he had raised. But silence loomed heavy in the air as he approached Jake. When they finally sat together, Tom's eyes widened. Jake had been working part-time to save money, gathering every dime to buy Tom a new tool set, hoping to lighten his burdens. Panic surged through Tom's chest, mingling with an unexpected swell of pride. Torn between gratitude and guilt, he opened his mouth, ready to say something, a question, expression, acknowledgement, just as an unexpected knock at the door shattered the fragile stillness. They exchanged glances filled with apprehension. Who could it be? What revelation would that knock bring? The bridge they began to rebuild hanging in limbo. Tom froze. The collective weight of the moment draped over him as the knock reverberated through the house. He saw Jake's expression twist from hope to uncertainty, a mirror of Tom's own internal turmoil. The urge to run to the door tugged at him, an instinct for uncovering whatever lay beyond. Yet he remained rooted to the floor, grappling with the decision that faced him. This moment bore the potential for confrontation, for vulnerability, the heart of what had plagued their bond for so long. "Should I get it?" Jake asked, his voice barely above a whisper, a hint of fear emerging that pushed against the youthful bravado he often projected. Tom nodded slowly, trying to quell the tempest in his gut. "Yeah, let's see who it is." With cautious steps, Jake approached the door, and Tom's heart raced. Each tick of the clock echoed like a countdown, amplifying the need for resolution. As Jake opened the door, an unexpected figure stepped into the light. Their neighbor, Mr. Collins, an affable retired mechanic, and a man who had often offered Tom both advice and camaraderie over the years. "Hope I'm not interrupting," Mr. Collins said, his voice warm yet serious. "I thought you two could use a conversation. Mind if I step in?" Tom's breath hitched in his throat. Did he even want to engage in a conversation right now? Clarity and confusion tangled like the wires of a disassembled engine. But the sentiments etched across Jake's face urged him forward, pushing him to embrace the opportunity the universe had handed him directly on his doorstep. "Sure, come in," managed to choke out, moving aside as Mr. Collins entered their small living room. Sitting down, the tension in the air was palpable. Mr. Collins wasted no time. "I couldn't help but overhear you two having a bit of a disagreement earlier. You know, sometimes those disagreements hit the hardest when they're about things we care about the most." His gaze shifted between father and son, as if challenging them to dig deeper. Tom felt exposed under the scrutiny of Mr. Collins' sage eyes. The unspoken truth teetered on the edge of his tongue, an acknowledgement of his failures, his fears of not being enough for himself or himself. A sleek vehicle, shiny and new, marred by an uneven parking attempt. Yet it was the muffled curses and laughter that pierced through the air, igniting Tom's protective instincts. "Hey, everything okay?" he shouted, his voice cutting through the quiet, strained tension carried by uncertainty. One of the boys turned, his grin faltering at Tom's stern demeanor. "Yeah, man, it's fine, just trying to get it to start." He gestured toward the hood, smoke billowing from the engine like an angry spirit. Tom's initial instinct was to bark orders, to reprimand them for potential recklessness, but somewhere within him doubt brewed. Where had that instinct grown from? He was not just a father. He was a person grappling with his own perceptions of success and responsibility. These teens were likely trying to fix something they felt was theirs, yet the circumstance belied the surface vibrations of youth and bravado. Returning to the living room, he found Jake still seated, Mr. Collins leaning back, arms crossed in silent composure. "It's just a couple of kids messing with a car," Tom reported, brushing off the initial instinct to escalate the situation. "They seem to be all right." "Good," Mr. Collins replied simply, lifting his brow slightly. "It's a reminder of how situations can appear chaotic, but often there's more beneath." Seated again, Tom's thoughts reeled. Something about the interactions, a collision of youth, neglect, and fear, mirrored his relationship with Jake. Had he treated his son's dreams the same way he approached the emergency in front of him? Had he rushed to fix rather than understand? "Jake," Tom said, weighing his words carefully, "I know I haven't been the most supportive. I want to change that. I want you to know that I'm here to listen." Jake's expression softened, the tension that had built seemingly dissipating in response to his father's admission. "Thanks, Dad," Jake replied, "but it's hard. It's hard to know how to say what I'm feeling when I hear you talking about me like I can't stand on my own." Tom was struck by his son's insight. It cut deeper than any surface argument they'd ever had. The boy had been taking the brunt of his expectations, unsure of how to forge his unique path. Outside, the world continued its tune, a backdrop to the shifting dialogue within the house. "Let's make a plan," Tom suggested, determination rising inside him. "Not just for your future, but to explore together where we both want to be." Jake tilted his head, a glimmer of hope mingled with skepticism. "Are you really ready for that? I mean, ready to hear me out?" There it was again, a moment of realignment, but the stakes felt higher. Tom realized that this was no mere exchange. It was an opportunity to confront his own unyielding fears of inadequacy. Could he truly step back and allow Jake to guide their next phase of life together? "Absolutely. I don't want to interrupt your dreams anymore, Jake. Let's build something together." Jake tilted his head, a glimmer of hope mingled with skepticism. "Are you really ready for that? I mean, ready to hear me out?" There it was again, a moment of realignment, but the stakes felt higher. Tom realized that this was no mere exchange. It was an opportunity to confront his own unyielding fears of inadequacy. Could he truly step back and allow Jake to guide their next phase of life together? "Absolutely. I don't want to interrupt your dreams anymore, Jake. Let's build something together." Yet, as they sat facing one another, the shadows of doubt crept in once again. Was this a moment of true breakthrough, or merely a fleeting moment where words masked the real issues bubbling beneath the surface? As he regarded Jake's earnest expression, Tom couldn't shake the feeling that the road ahead was still fraught with unseen obstacles. And just then another engine roared outside, but this time it belonged to a different car, one that screeched along the street, diverting their attention. Tom's pulse quickened, his instincts returning with vigor. Was this a coincidence or a disruption waiting to unfold? What chaos awaited them next? Would this new threat push Tom to confront the deeper issues at hand, or would it drive him back into the shadows of his fears? Tom hesitated as the growling engine drew nearer, the sound echoing like a herald of impending disruption. His earlier resolve to connect with Jake felt fragile, precariously balanced on the edge of chaos that roiled around them. He stood, torn between the urge to shield his son from the unexpected and the necessity to confront the storm brewing beyond their front door. "Stay here," he murmured to Jake, the reassurance in his voice overshadowed by an unseen anxiety. He stepped outside again, the cool air biting into his skin. It was a stark contrast to the warmth of the intimate conversation that had momentarily enveloped them. The vehicle had come to a rattling halt just past the end of their driveway, and Tom felt a tug of instinct urging him forward. He approached, caution intertwined with curiosity. What were the stakes of this interruption? As he reached the end of the property, he could make out the silhouette of a familiar car, the car of their neighbor, Steve, who often pushed the boundaries of noise and mischief in the community. "Steve," Tom called, his words swimming with an undercurrent of frustration. "You know me, always testing the limits," Steve replied with a flippant grin that infuriated and amused Tom in equal measure. But beneath the joviality, the tension in Steve's posture signaled something deeper. "Everything all right?" Tom pressed, taking a step closer, inspecting the man and his vehicle with a discerning eye. Something was off. Steve's usual carefree manner seemed weighed down by an invisible burden. "Just trying to troubleshoot an issue," Steve said, a short chuckle cascading from his lips, though it lacked the authenticity Tom had come to expect. Tom surveyed the engine, the scent of burning fuel wafting through the air, vying for his attention. The chaotic emotions that had enveloped him before felt like a distant echo. Perhaps this was a chance to understand, a chance for connection that transcends their typical banter. "Need a hand?" he offered, surprising even himself with his commitment to dive deeper rather than retreat into judgment. "Sure, man, grab that wrench," Steve said, gesturing toward his toolbox. Tom moved with purpose, the task redirecting his focus, forcing him to think through his own doubts as he worked alongside his neighbor. As they delved into the complexity of the car, Tom sensed something shifting within himself. Each turn of the wrench echoed a new realization. He was learning, not just mechanically, but also emotionally. Taking apart the car felt akin to dismantling the misunderstandings that blighted his relationship with Jake. The noise of the engine was no longer an inconvenience. It became a means to break through the silence of their fears. "Ever think about how fixing a car is a lot like parenting?" Tom mused, shooting a sideways glance at Steve. "You get so caught up on how to do it right that you forget to understand what the problem really is." Steve paused, a flicker of realization crossing his face. "You might be onto something there. Sometimes we just want to get it running again without seeing why it's sputtering in the first place." Tom considered Steve's words, the implications weaving seamlessly into his own narrative. He realized that his approach to Jake had often been driven by the desire to fix rather than collaborate. What if he encouraged exploration instead of demanding performance? What if he allowed himself to be vulnerable in the process? Energized by this epiphany, a rush of determination surged through him. He needed to extend this insight back to Jake, share this newfound understanding of growth and trust. The world outside buzzed with renewed urgency. He had just begun to excavate profound truths, not only about himself, but about the delicate threads that bound him to his son. "Got it," shouted Steve as the car roared back to life, cutting through the haze of Tom's retrospective thoughts. Everything else faded momentarily, leaving Tom with a singular realization. This was the kind of breakthrough he yearned for with Jake. As he stood there, watching the vehicle veer away, a knot of anticipation gripped him. Should he head back in and confront the deeper issues with his son, or was this newfound understanding merely a stepping stone? Would Jake welcome this version of his father, the one willing to dig deeper into confronting their fears together? Just then, the clamor of wheels screeching again pierced his thoughts. A dark silhouette approached, incongruous with the moments of clarity he had just achieved. Something was not right, and an electric charge of fear jolted through him as the unknown approached, cascading into the resolution Tom had been building with Jake. What was unfolding before him, and was he ready to face the truth once more, both outside and within? The vehicle rolled to a stop, revealing a familiar face, Kelly, the local mechanic, with an air of urgency that cut through the lingering tension. "Tom," Kelly called, her voice tight with anxiety, "I need your help, fast." She arrived flustered, her hands gripping the doorframe as if it were her lifeline. "What happened?" Tom asked, instinctively shifting focus from the chaos of his previous introspection to the immediate crisis. He could sense the gravity of the situation, pushing aside his own revelations for the moment. Kelly glanced around, as if weighing whether to share the whole truth. A collision just happened down the road, multiple cars involved, and they need extra hands to clear the wreckage. I thought you'd want to help. A part of Tom wanted to decline, seeking solace in the emotional work he had just begun with Jake. Yet another, deeper part of him felt this was the very test of character he had been seeking. This was more than just a chance to assist. It was an opportunity to embody the change he wanted to model for Jake. "Okay," he affirmed, determination hardening in his tone. "Let's go." He followed Kelly to her vehicle, quickly acknowledging the inner conflict swirling within. Could stepping into this chaotic moment become a practical lesson not only in service but in facing fears, both his and Jake's? As Tom slid into the passenger seat, he couldn't shake the notion that this chaotic scene mirrored his relationship with Jake. Just as cars needed rebuilding after collisions, could their connection be salvaged, remade, even after painful fractures? A desire coursed through him to rise to this occasion, to show Jake that vulnerability and strength could coexist. As they arrived at the scene, the panorama of destruction settled around them. The sight of crushed metal and scattered remnants felt overwhelming, echoing the fears and uncertainties he had faced as a father. It was time to act, to encourage a response other than retreat. They split up, Kelly directing others, while Tom assessed the scene for ways to help. Amid the stress and chaos, he saw families huddled together, helping and supporting, and he wrestled with the realization that connections often form in times of crisis. "Hey," a familiar voice called out. Turning around, Tom was met by Billy, an old friend from high school. They hadn't spoken in years, their lives drifting apart like so many abandoned vehicles. "Tom, get over here," Billy waved, a mix of enthusiasm and urgency in his eyes. As Tom approached, he caught a glimpse of Billy's strained expression, a wince of nostalgia tinged with regret. "I've been meaning to reach out. Things have been tough," he admitted, his voice low, as if the rawness of their past hung in the air between them. The prospect of reconnecting felt daunting, but Tom was also aware that healing could not start if they stayed locked in their past. "You okay?" "Okay," he asked, trying to find the right words that would inspire connection instead of isolation. Billy sighed, tension fleeting as they fell into a rhythm, working side by side. "You know, when I look back, I don't remember the arguments, just the times we had each other's backs, he said, dropping a beam with an earnestness that caught Tom off guard. As they worked, pieces of the puzzle began to surface. Each conversation started to untangle threads of their shared past, revealing emotions buried under years of neglect. Tom sensed a parallel to his own situation with Jake, a moment in time where rekindling connection could spark growth. The chaotic atmosphere slowly shifted as teamwork and support transformed the overwhelming task into an opportunity for solidarity. Each small victory against the wreckage felt analogous to the battle he waged within himself. The sun dipped lower in the sky, casting an orange hue that warmed Tom's thoughts. He realized that perhaps he needed to reach out to Jake, showing him that being vulnerable wasn't a weakness, but the beginning of building something stronger together. Feeling invigorated by the connections he was fostering, Tom glanced back at Kelly and Billy, uncertainty swirling in his mind. Would they understand his new outlook? Would it translate when he finally faced Jake again, confronting the deeper issues that still haunted their relationship? Just then, a sudden roar of sirens pulled him back, drawing his attention to the unfolding events nearby. The stakes seemed to elevate. Everything hung in balance. A brief moment where a choice could shape the trajectory of his personal and familial journey loomed on the horizon. Would he confront the noise of his unresolved relationship with Jake once and for all? Or would the lessons learned today still linger in the shadows, unaddressed and untouched? As the urgency heightened, Tom felt the weight of time pressing against him. The reckoning awaited, and he steeled himself for the aftermath of the revelations to come. What awaited him when he returned home? Would he find courage in this moment of clarity, or would fear pull him back into silence? As the last echoes of the sirens faded into the distance, Tom's thoughts sharpened. The adrenaline from the chaotic scene still coursed through him, invigorating every nerve. Despite the uncertainty and potential fallout waiting at home, he knew he had to fortify his resolve. Each heartbeat resonated with a burgeoning clarity, a truth he could no longer ignore. He had to communicate with Jake, to move past the inertia that had defined their relationship for so long. Yet, as he turned to his companions, Kelly and Billy, he felt a new vulnerability stirring within him. The camaraderie forged in the wreckage had revealed something deeper. It called on him to be real and open about his struggles. He took a long breath, feeling the gravity of his choices. The accident scene was chaotic, but it was also a sacred moment of connection. I can't shake the feeling that we all have our wrecks we need to deal with, he said, breaking the silence among them. Sometimes it's about helping others, but sometimes it's about helping ourselves, too. Kelly looked at him, her brow furrowed slightly, but her eyes bright. What do you mean, Tom? I've been carried by the weight of what I'm not saying, and I want to change that. If I can reach out here, I can reach out at home. The realization washed over him. Communication had always been the bridge he needed to cross, both as a father and a man. The transient nature of their work began to shift into a more solid foundation of introspection. Billy straightened up, wiping sweat from his brow, a pensive look forming. You think it's just as easy as saying what you need to and everything will be all right? Tom pondered. No, it won't be easy, but it will be real. Maybe we all have to face what's waiting beyond our fears. The streetlights blinked to life, casting a soft glow on the debris around them. With every object they moved, memories of fear and hope clashed within him, pushing him closer to action. No longer could he pretend that everything was fine. The might you've shown today is nothing compared to the character you need to show at home. As the three of them worked together, the sun finally set, giving way to a fresh night sky. Shadows, once ominous, now seemed like a blanket of possibility. Each piece of wreckage they cleared felt symbolic, a testament to what he could dismantle and rebuild within his own life. "I'll be braving the darkness soon." Tom's words were almost a whisper, spoken more to himself than to his friends. The thought of confronting Jake sent a shiver down his spine. Vulnerability invites discomfort, but it also promised growth. Kelly finished stacking a pile of metal scraps and turned toward Tom. "You still have time to prepare, but it'll matter. Trust me. Facing your son, that's the challenge worth taking." A warm sense of gratitude surged within him for this new perspective. These actions had transformed something mundane into a catalyst for healing. The chaos around him mirrored his emotions, the fear of the unknown against the exhilaration of decisiveness. As they wrapped up their work, Billy clapped Tom on the back in solidarity. "You're already doing better than you think. Reflection takes time, but you're on your way." Driving away from the scene, Tom kept replaying the evening in his mind. He was no longer just a bystander in his own life. He was part of a dialogue that required participation, with Jake being the most crucial audience. The road home felt longer than ever, underlined by an uncomfortable silence that hung heavily in the air. The echoes of the past clashed against his resolve, and his mind raced with questions. What would he find when he opened that door? Would Jake react with anger, hurt, or surprise? As these thoughts spiraled, Tom sensed the impending confrontation looming ahead, inevitável e unstoppable. The moment had come to face his own wreckage, and all he could hope was that he would not leave anything unsaid this time. Would this end in healing, or would the shadows of their past devour them both? Everything hung by a thread as he approached the familiar driveway, and his heart pounded fiercely in anticipation of what lay beyond the front door. Was he prepared to rebuild, or would the fear of silence shatter his resolve once more? As Tom stepped out of the car, the cool evening air enveloped him, sharp and invigorating. Each breath felt like a reminder of what awaited inside. The shadows cast long over the driveway, and in the dim light, the house appeared both inviting and ominous. He hesitated for a moment, his hand resting on the door handle. The confrontation with Jake wasn't just a conversation. This was about peeling back layers of silence that had become a coating around their relationship. The door creaked as he entered, a sound that echoed in the quiet of the house. He paused in the entryway, allowing his eyes to adjust to the dimness. The living room lay awash in muted colors and scattered remnants of daily life, paintings of happier moments glinting in the low light. Yet the memories they represented felt like specters haunting the space. "Jake?" he called softly, not wanting to disrupt the tenuous calm that hung in the air. The reply was a muffled silence, thickening the tension around him. Tom walked further into the house, every step heavy with uncertainty. This was new terrain, a territory of vulnerability where he had seldom ventured. Seeing the empty couch, the stillness amplifying his unease, he understood the depth of their disconnect. The boy that once sat beside him, laughing and sharing moments of joy, had grown distant, encased in silence that spoke louder than words. And he was just as responsible for that distance. His heart pounded with a growing urgency to reach out, to span that chasm. But a creeping doubt clutched at him. What if Jake met him with resistance? What if the boy he hoped to reconnect with shrugged him off, uninterested in anything he had to say? A sudden noise broke through his thoughts, footsteps thumping upstairs. Without thinking, Tom's heart raced back to those words spoken earlier, how each wreck they handled that day served as a powerful metaphor for what lay ahead. This confrontation, no matter how daunting, was an opportunity for healing. "Hey, Dad!" Jake appeared at the top of the stairs, his voice tinged with surprise and caution. For a moment they locked eyes, complex emotions flickering between them like a flame in the darkness. Tom searched Jake's expression. Was that hesitation or a flicker of curiosity? "Can we talk?" Tom's voice emerged steadier than he felt. It was a simple request, echoing both hope and trepidation.
Guia de estilo e instruções para a síntese de fala.
"I mean, it's not important," he muttered, crossing his arms tighter across his chest, displaying a stance of defiance that mirrored his inner turmoil. "No, you're important," Tom replied, his voice calming yet resolute. He reached out, allowing the phone to further nag at him as he approached this pivotal juncture. In that moment, he recognized that Jake's irritation was a symptom of greater discontent, and it mirrored his own unresolved feelings. The crux of their distance lay not just in miscommunication, but in mutual misunderstanding, a shared sense of neglect. Lifting the phone off the surface, he looked at the screen. It was a message from his boss, an urgent request for an update that could very well wait. In that split second, he debated whether to respond, to conform to the demands of his professional life, or to prioritize the fragile connection before him. Tom glanced up at Jake, who seemed both irritated and curious now, his eyebrows drawn together. "Dad, sometimes it feels like your job matters more than me," he said, the frustration spilling out like a broken dam. The words lodged in Tom's throat, sharp and uncomfortable. He'd wanted to shield Jake from his struggles, but perhaps it was time to admit the truth. His work had often taken precedent over everything else. It was a hard truth, and as he faced his son, he understood that this was not merely an indictment. It was an invitation to acknowledge the failures and to shift the narrative. "That's fair," Tom finally replied, his tone softening and a weight lifted from his chest. "You're right. I've let my work consume me. I've put other things ahead of you, and that's something I'm trying to change." The admission hung in the air, allowing them both a moment to breathe. The silence that followed was no longer heavy with tension. It felt like the beginning of something new, a possibility emerging from vulnerability. Jake looked at Tom with wary eyes, searching for sincerity. "You really mean that?" he asked, his defensive posture relaxing just a fraction. "Yes, I do. I want to be better as a dad. I don't want to lose you," Tom answered, the conviction in his voice surprising him. This was where he pivoted from a passive to an active role in their relationship. Jake hesitated, and Tom could see the shifting emotions in his son's gaze, fear, hope, and a tentative willingness to engage. "For real? Because sometimes the way you've acted makes me feel invisible." Jake's voice cracked slightly, betraying his tough exterior. The intensity of that moment forced Tom to reflect on his priorities. How many chances had he missed? How many moments had slipped away in silence? He nodded, understanding the task ahead was not just about the conversation, but about consistent actions, a path of integrity and connection that needed nurturing. I get it, and I want to show you that I can do better, Jake, but it's going to take time and effort from both of us. Are you willing to help me with that? The question lingered in the air, heavy with implication. The path ahead seemed steep, but less daunting with this mutual commitment. Jake's expression softened, and a glimmer of something akin to hope sparked in his eyes. Yeah, maybe, he replied cautiously, his body language shifting as if he was considering the possibility of a change. But just as they stood on the brink of understanding, the phone buzzed again, shattering the fragile atmosphere between them. Who else would reach out in this crucial moment? What external demands would threaten this newly formed bond? Tom's heart clenched. Would he allow the outside world to intrude once more, or would he take another step into the unknown, embracing the vulnerability that lay ahead? The answer could shape not just his relationship with Jake, but also his own journey toward redemption. What lay beyond that decision could rewrite their story altogether. The phone's vibrations intensified, a relentless drumming against Tom's resolve. But in that moment, standing before Jake, he felt a new sense of determination swell within him. Ignoring the phone became more than just an act of defiance against work. It was a declaration of his intent to prioritize his relationship with his son. Jake shifted again, the tension still present, but now threaded with curiosity. His guarded stance began to soften, a subtle signal that maybe, just maybe, he was willing to continue this complicated dance of reconciliation. When Tom finally met his son's gaze, it was as if they were both standing on a precipice, glimpsing an uncharted territory filled with potential. "What if we make a pact?" Tom suggested, his voice steady as he sought to solidify this fragile moment. "A weekly check-in, just you and me. No phones, just us talking. How does that sound?" Jake looked surprised, as if a door he thought permanently shut was suddenly ajar. "You'd actually want to do that?" "Absolutely," Tom responded, the weight of the words grounding him. He needed to show Jake that he was serious, that this wasn't just lip service. "We'll figure out the schedule together, make it work." The flicker of apprehension in Jake's eyes morphed into something softer, perhaps tentative hope. "Okay, I could do that." The agreement, though small, felt like a turning point. Tom's heart quickened with a mix of excitement and fear. He'd taken a significant first step toward repairing their relationship, yet he was acutely aware of the long road ahead. This commitment would require consistency, something he'd previously vacated in favor of work pressures and deadlines. He wanted to be the dad that Jake deserved, not just the figure he had been. As they stood in the airy space of their home, the familiar walls seemed to take on a newfound vibrancy, echoing with the promise of change. But still, that phantom buzz wouldn't ease. It was a siren song calling him back a world that demanded his attention, even as he stepped deeper into this one. Jake, sensing Tom's distraction, broke the silence. "Dad, is it really that important, your job?" The question pierced through Tom's thoughts, forcing him to confront the weight of his own reality. Did he truly find fulfillment in his work, or was it merely an escape from facing the unknowns of parenthood? "Not anymore," he replied, surprising even himself with the sincerity of his declaration. "It used to mean everything, but I've realized it's misplaced." "Huh," Jake murmured, considering the answer. "It's like you're redefining what matters, huh?" Tom nodded, encouraging the dialogue. "Exactly. I want to rediscover what's important, and that starts with us." The relief Tom felt was palpable. He was laying down the bricks for a foundation that had once crumbled. But a nagging uncertainty lingered in the back of his mind. What repercussions would his work-life balance face with this newfound commitment? Would his boss understand this change, or would it spark conflict? Jake's eyes flicked toward the phone, still buzzing ominously, bridging the chasm they had begun to step across. "You should probably check it," he offered, his tone gentle, almost too understanding. "Not right now," Tom said, adamant. Each moment spent with Jake was a negotiation with his own past decisions. Jake sighed and leaned back against the wall, uncertainty breaching his hopeful facade. "You think it will be okay to keep going with this?" Tom looked at his son, the weight of what he needed to say heavy on his heart. "I think it will be, if we both keep showing up for each other," he replied carefully. The challenge shifted now from words to actions. Could he maintain this commitment with all external pressures looming? The moment felt like a fragile promise, and he feared that the outside world might threaten its integrity. But before he could voice another thought, the phone buzzed once more. It was clear this hidden demand from the professional realm was not going to relent easily. As Tom's brow furrowed and Jake's eyes grew impatient, a realization began to dawn. This was just the beginning of a battle for balance between work and family. Would he falter, or would he learn to carve space for both? He had already crossed one threshold, but the next one loomed large, ready to challenge him yet again. The time had come to face the question that wouldn't go away. How much was he willing to sacrifice to build something meaningful with Jake? Taking a deep breath, Tom knew he needed to address both the buzzing phone and the tension between him and Jake. The moment felt electric, charged with the potential for a fresh start, yet fraught with the weight of past mistakes. "Jake," he began, his voice calm yet firm, "I want to make a promise to you. Our relationship is more important than anything." Jake's expression shifted from skepticism to curiosity. "What do you mean?" "I mean that I'll put in the effort. It's time I stop letting work come between us. I'll do the hard work to prove it, starting today." There was something significant about that declaration. Tom's heart swelled at the gravity of his commitment. He felt as though he had laid down a gauntlet, not just for himself, but for Jake as well. "And about that call," Tom continued, moving toward the phone but not fully reaching for it. "I can't let it control my time and attention. This moment with you is where I need to be." Jake chuckled softly, an indication of warmth beneath his guarded demeanor. "So you're really going to ignore it?" "Absolutely," Tom replied with a nod, "and I want you to hold me accountable. If I ever slip back into old habits, you have my permission to bring me back to this moment." Jake bit his lip, but Tom could see the astonishment in his eyes. His son wasn't used to seeing this side of his father. Vulnerability was new to both of them, but a spark of understanding began to flicker to life between them. "Well, then," Jake said hesitantly, "maybe I'll be the one reminding you." "Deal," Tom smiled, relief flooding through him. It was a simple word, but the implications were profound. He was acknowledging Jake's voice in their relationship and recognizing the role they would now play together, transforming from a parent-child duo into partners navigating the future together. In the moments that followed, the atmosphere in the room felt lighter, almost like a trembling birth of hope. They were both aware that commitment to one another was the first stepping stone toward rebuilding what had been broken over time. "Can we start with small things?" Jake asked. "Like maybe watching that show we used to enjoy together?" Tom felt a sense of elation. "Absolutely. Let's schedule that in. Our time, just you and me." Through those words, Tom sensed the weight of unfulfilled sacrifices beginning to lift. No longer was he just carrying his past disappointments. He was now building a future defined by intention with his son. As the evening wore on, they chose to put aside their earlier frustrations and anxieties, immersing themselves in laughter and shared moments. As they binge-watched their favorite show, time blurred, giving way for genuine connections to reappear like vines in the spring, reclaiming territory long neglected. Finally, settled in their cozy spaces, Tom took a moment to reflect on the significance of their interaction. "You know, all those years of pushing for what I thought was right, it made me blind to what you needed," he said at a quieter moment, breaking through the lighter banter. Jake paused the screen, turning to inspect his father's face seriously. "It's okay, Dad. I always understood. It just sucked." A lump formed in Tom's throat, his eyes watering slightly. "I never meant to push so hard. You've got talents and dreams I need to support without pushing my own agenda. Now, I urge you to be part of this emotional journey. Subscribe immediately to our channel so you won't miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and keep these captivating stories alive. Comment your thoughts and theories about this powerful conclusion. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need inspiration and courage to face their own familial challenges. You need to subscribe now because this is the moment to show your support. Don't wait even one more second to share.